The English press are absolutely shattered. Where in the world will they get their overly negative headlines if not from the national team? I mean, Ben Earl said it best.
Danny's 100th and some of the crap that's been thrown at this team over the last week. Apparently we're the worst England team ever, so we've done pretty well for that accolade.
This is not just an impressive win for England. This is a win that will really mean something to this team and that they can take into the future. While Ireland weren't at their absolute best, I do think it's an unfair assessment to say that this is a game that Ireland lost instead of a game that England won. We'll be analysing this game from a tactical perspective. We'll look at how England managed to surge ahead and dominate the first portion of the game through their aggressive defending and surprisingly wide attack. Then we'll look at what positives Ireland can take away from the game and where they can really improve. Let's start with what was a remarkably threatening English attack. When we think of these two teams, we generally tend to think of Ireland as this blisteringly quick and direct team that will overwhelm you, while England tend to be more methodical and lower risk, as was the case in the World Cup. This Irish team is still the best in the world at the attacking game in my opinion. But England are really starting to add a dynamic layer to their attack that is beautiful to watch. They played with a very large amount of width in this game. England made 163 passes to Ireland's 118, despite having similar amounts of possession. England also had a kick-to-pass ratio of 1 to 7.1 and Ireland 1 to 4.2. Now, I do think that Ireland's lower passing number is indicative of how effective England's defence was. But these stats would suggest that England had the plan of attacking Ireland in the wider channels as opposed to keeping the game more tight. They positioned their pods wider in their overall 1-3-2-2 structure with a lot of interplay between the forwards and the backline. They also played their pods from the first receiver a lot instead of the 9. What further reinforces this focus on width is that even when they were close to or in Ireland's 22, they were looking to attack wide with both their pods and backline. This philosophy was on display on counter-attack as well. When turning the ball over, England looked to move the ball to their wingers instead of booting it up the field. I thought this was really interesting given how territorial this team tends to play, and I think their coaching team definitely saw some weaknesses in Ireland's wider channels that could be exploited. We can see this approach in their first and second tries. In the first, England restarts into the Irish 22. Usually, Ireland will try to probe the defence into the middle of the field, but England's defenders do well to shut down this option and tackles burn deep. Lowe then tries to get a lot of distance on the ball, but doesn't kick it out. This allows Furbank and the rest of England's back three to plan a potent counter-attack. Furbank then runs the ball to the opposite side of Ireland's forwards, where there is more space. He passes to Freeman, who absolutely clatters into Calvin Nash. This gives Nash a pretty nasty injury, and he stays down. England then plays quickly to the left wing, where Ireland haven't adjusted their defenders to plug the space where Nash would have been. This gave them a 4-on-3, which they finished beautifully. Their second try starts in the 46th minute with a line-out. They run a crash ball with Ben Earl, who makes a phenomenal carry in the middle of the field. This gives them a very quick ruck, and England move the ball to the side of the field, where Freeman breaks down the touchline. He's forced to make a wild pass inside, where England lose possession. Ireland then exit, but again don't find touch, which gives Ford and Furbank an excellent opportunity to counter-attack. Ford gives the ball to Furbank, who runs to attack the opposite side of the Irish forwards once again. However, notice how Ireland overcompensates here by adding way more defenders to this side of the field. At the next ruck, 4 Irish defenders are covering 1 English attacker. England play wide again, and both their forwards and backs do well to draw the Irish defenders. This ultimately means that England have a massive overlap, and through slick handling from Underhill and Deterje, they managed to score a beautiful try. While England did show impressive attack overall, Ireland's defence was resolute. England had lots of 22 entries, but struggled to convert these opportunities into points. This is the main reason for Ireland's 12-8 halftime lead, despite England dominating for most of the first half. A pivotal part of Ireland's defence is their really hard breakdown work, and this game was no exception. In total, Ireland won 7 jackling penalties, with a lot of them coming when under pressure on their own goal line. A big reason for this was that while England's wider attacks were effective, it was also quite risky. Their attackers were frequently isolated, and it gave Ireland opportunities to take back the game's momentum. We can see this in this example in the 9th minute, where England are running a strike move from the line-out. After a hard carry from Ellis Genge, England are on the front foot and decide to spread it wide where there's more space. Furbank then takes it in, but as Ben Earl is expecting the offload, he's not in a position to support at the ruck. This leads to 2 Irish defenders who can jackal, and ultimately Van der Fleer, who wins the penalty. As an aside, this attack was really smart as it drew Kieran Frawley out of the backfield to cover the wing, leaving an excellent opportunity for a chip kick. I know this play happened at lightning speed, but it was a slight missed opportunity from England. Another small advantage for Ireland was that I thought that their game management with their territorial kicking was solid. Despite England's possession and territorial advantage, mostly because of their poor line-out, they did manage to push England back when there was a kicking battle. This is antithetical to how England wants to play, which is in their opponent's half of the field. We can see this philosophy in action in this period of play. Ireland has a line-out just outside England's 22, and usually we would see Ireland try to go through a lot of phases before trying something more risky. However, here they decide to put up a midfield bomb with strong chasers to hopefully disrupt England and force a turnover. England do well to regather, but they are under heaps of pressure because Ireland are competing heavily at every ruck. George Ford then clears, and it gives Ireland a line-out 10 meters upfield from where the original one took place. Speaking of kicking, it's an area where England have managed to put lots of pressure on teams the Six Nations, specifically in the aerial battle. In this game, when they put up competitive kicks for their chasers, they managed to disrupt the Irish backfield defenders effectively. We can see this in this period, where England set up a kicking platform from the line-out. Alex Mitchell puts in a high but shorter kick, which means there's enough time for the English chasers to get under the ball. Notice how Freeman is trying to tap the ball back to the English defenders, standing right behind the aerial contest. Whibble Rugby did an amazing video on how England approaches this contest, so I'll link it in the description. But essentially, the English chasers are hanging a few meters back instead of swarming the receiver and applying big pressure at the breakdown. They are relying on the competing winger to disrupt and send the ball their way. This carries a bit more risk, but if it pays off, it will give England possession up the field with a great attacking platform. Speaking of creating great platforms, I want to talk a bit about this man. Ben Earl had an absolute stormer of a match and well-deserved Player of the Match award. He is an incredibly dynamic player with a lot of pace and power. On Saturday, he made 20 carries, with many of them being quite dominant and making lots of meters. Like here, the speed at which he changes direction to attack a not too disjointed Irish defensive line is remarkable. This is such a good effect that he can put Jamie George, one of the slowest English players, into heaps of space. He also made 12 effective tackles. But perhaps the biggest effect that he had on the game was at the breakdown. He's got a very low center of gravity and his legs are shorter than most back rowers. This gives him an edge when it comes to getting low and competing for the ball. This had the knock-on effect of slowing down Ireland's attack even more. However, Ireland still showed that they are a really dangerous team that can take even the smallest of opportunities. Let's take the first Irish try as an example. England start with a scrum and run a strong crash ball in the middle of the field, which gives them momentum. They once again play quick, but this time they're not that accurate and concede a penalty at the next ruck for side entry. Crowley then puts in a good kick for touch, and Ireland get a line out at the 10-meter line. From here, they set up a simple maul at the front, which moves forward, but does ultimately collapse. Gibson Park puts in a beautiful short box kick, which allows Keenan to regather as Freeman has to come out of the backfield. This gave Ireland an extremely quick ruck, and as a result, the English defence couldn't adjust quickly enough to get numbers on the open side. We'll get to English defensive system just now, but it forced Henry Slade to shoot up strongly, which created a big gap and which Crowley exploited beautifully. From there, it was simply drawing the English defenders and passing until they got over the try line. During the match, they also managed to exploit some gaps on the side of the ruck where the English guard defenders were not focused enough to provide pick and goes. Ireland's attack positioned themselves quite a bit deeper than in their previous games. The idea here was to give them more space to assess and exploit gaps that might open up in England's aggressive defence. In the 6th minute, we can see this focus on depth. Ireland's first receiver stands 10 meters behind the gain line, and Aki, who takes the ball in, gets the ball at the halfway line, 15 meters behind the gain line. Both teams do well in this instance. England does well to keep their connections strong and to man up with the Irish attackers. And Aki does well to use his power and carry all the way to the gain line, giving Ireland momentum. But in the very next phase, this deeper attack continues. Ireland's quick recycling means that there isn't enough time for England's defence to move numbers over to the other side. Ireland then run a very good blocker pattern, with Keenan acting as the first receiver, Frawley as the inside runner, and Crowley as the outside runner, who gets the ball into space. After drawing the English winger, Crowley gives the ball to Sheehan and Lowe, who run all the way to the 22. While this period of play didn't lead to a try, it put England under huge amounts of pressure. Despite this, England's defence were quite effective at shutting down the Irish attack for most of the match. England uses a rush defensive system that is very reminiscent of the strong Springbok defence that won them the 2019 and 2023 World Cups. The idea is that they want to shut down their opponent's attack very aggressively, and it comes in two general phases. The first is that they shoot up quickly to target the ball in the middle of the field, and the second is to transition into a strong drift should the ball get on the outside. It's really important for the outside defenders to have strong communication on whether or not they will shoot up quickly or if they will drift. England's defence was really solid during set pieces as well. During this restart, they sent the ball deep to Bundy Aki, and with good hang time, they managed to tackle him before he could make good meters. On most kick receipts, Ireland would try to probe the defence and give Lowe a better clearing angle by putting up a pod in the middle of the field. That's exactly what they do here, but England's aggressive defence pushes them back to their own 5-meter line. James Lowe then clears, but the lineout is much closer to their own 22 than they would like it to be. Without a doubt, the biggest hurdle for Ireland was their inaccuracy during the lineout. It's a strange one, because Ireland have one of the best lineouts in the entirety of the Six Nations. While England did well to take away Ireland's mauling platform, Ireland did struggle to secure their own ball as effectively as their previous games. What's amazing about this result is that it opens up the competition for a wide number of possibilities. Every team, even Ireland, have something to play for, and it makes for one of the most exciting Six Nations in the past decade.